In the modern, busy, competitive world, the demands on humans are in a lot of ways like unreasonable and just like not sustainable on our systems. This is my opinion that it's just kind of a broken system for most people.
Absolutely.
I feel like some people maybe have, find ways or opportunities to sort of thrive within the system or have it be workable. But for so many people, I think it's just a bad system.
Welcome to And Then I Did This. Prepare to be inspired as we celebrate the unique journeys of individuals who've had the courage to break free and live life on their own terms. Their lives prove that you truly can be free to live your best and most authentic life. Let's get to it. Welcome to another episode. I have a special guest today. Furst is the founder of Muse, a consulting firm that empowers leaders, companies, and organizations to unlock their biggest and best ideas and orient them to what matters most. Prior to his work at Muse, JR spent many years as a copywriter in the corporate world, and he co-founded Beyond the Prison, served as a program director at Youth Spirit Artworks, and was an on-air radio personality. And ironically, JR also hosts his own podcast called Life's Effin' Nuts. JR, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Great to be here. Excited to talk.
I feel like we're kindred souls. I binge listened to your podcast. You launched that recently.
Yeah, it's a new project.
Yes, and it's awesome. It's awesome. So I'm going to link that below. You have an interesting background. Share a little bit about your journey and how you got where you are today.
How much time do we have?
As much as you want.
Yeah, I mean, I am a storyteller, so I could tell like long, winding stories of how I got here. I'll try to be as like concise and succinct and relevant as possible to your topic. Yeah. Basically, I have a creative soul and spirit, and I have since I was probably 14 or 15 years old. And it's not something that I chose. It's not something that I forced. It's just kind of who I am. And sometimes it can be hard to move through the world when I have such a desire to be creative, to transcend the status quo, to do things that move the needle and reach people's heart and touch people's hearts. Basically, like my early life, I was just like trying to make sense of this thing. I had this like fire burning inside of me. I had this like immense desire to create, to experience life, to connect with people, to move beyond sort of the boundaries that were sort of set for me in life. And it took me in a lot of interesting directions. I really, just followed the spirit of it. And it's partially the reason I call my company Muse, because it is very much about just following this spirit. And I was also a nonconformist when I was younger. For me, the idea of like having a normal, regular job or like a 5-year plan or like a life plan, like it felt kind of absurd. I just wanted to create art and live in the moment and have adventures and pursue the truth and things like that.
Right.
And so, early on, following the spirit, I traveled a lot. I was very influenced as a young person by Jack Kerouac, Bob Dylan. So like I wanted to like be in that stream of life. And naturally through those travels, like I wanted to perform, and I did a lot of street performing. I started singing old time ballads at Bob Dylan concerts in exchange for tickets. And I loved it. It was like, I wasn't making any money doing it, but it totally lit me up. I ended up doing that same thing in front of the Giants Park in San Francisco for baseball. And I started writing my own songs too. And that led to a gig on the radio where once a week I'd go on this major San Francisco radio station and perform this original work of there were sketches and ballads and poems and essays and things like that about sports. And then I became a bike taxi driver. I started this organization called Beyond This Prison. That led me to sort of the nonprofit world where I was a program director at Youth Spirit Artworks, an empowerment program for homeless youth in Berkeley.
Right.
And then in 2019, even though I'd done all these awesome, cool things, I was kind of tired of swimming upstream and reinventing the wheel and also like kind of living paycheck to paycheck. I did not want to get a regular corporate job. I did not. I had so much resistance. I hated everything about the idea. But I was like, I'm just tired of like living on the fringes of society. So I was like, I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to figure out how to do this in a way that works for me. And so I did. And I became a copywriter and did pretty well. But over time, especially working from home, once the pandemic hit, I really started to hate it a lot. It was just kind of killing my soul, I would say. And for like the last couple of years, I was sort of plotting my way out. Like, how do I get out of this, off this hamster wheel?
Oh.
Um, and eventually I was sort of like savvy financially to be able to create a cushion for myself so that I would have
Mhm.
time. For me as a creative person, time is like the most valuable resource.
Right.
I need the space and the time to let things
Mhm.
naturally emerge. So I created that cushion for myself. And that allowed me to sort of jump into this more independent life.
Mm.
And when I was younger, I had the independent life, but I didn't have the financial piece in place. And then I had the financial piece in place, but I didn't have the creative piece in place. And so now I'm sort of on the path of marrying those two. So that's the short version.
The short version. I think your free spirit is just so, I just love your free spirit. And I think there's a resurgence happening in as much as people are fighting it, like an awakening in corporate America. On the one hand, the pandemic was one of the worst things to
Yep.
happen, but it also was one of the best things that happened because it forced people to be with themselves
Yep.
and not be out running around on subways in traffic. They were with their family, they were with themselves or with their pets, whatever their situation was. I hear you so loud and clear when you say just the soul sedating nature of the whole corporate lifestyle, and what that is. So it's been a different journey for you because you've been awakened and then trying to conform into that space. And now you've like emerged in this really cool way of engaging with organizations to be that outside force that's not sucked into the system. You have a fresh set of eyes and can ask those empowering questions. But I'll say, like, what are some of the things that you do to keep yourself inspired and in that mode of doing what you're doing today?
Yeah, great question. Because inspiration is like the biggest piece. I think when
Right,
inspiration goes, if our soul or spirit is dead, if we don't have that spark,
right.
I went through periods of that when I was in the corporate world where I just couldn't find my soul and my spark and my spirit. And it's really
Mhm.
hard from that place to have creative ideas of how to get
Right,
out of the situation. So it's like or
right.
it's like, the hamster wheel, you're sort of stuck on it. So, I mean, for me, in some ways, like my whole life is designed for inspiration. Taking really good care of myself is like
Mhm.
making sure I'm well
Yeah,
resourced. Like
yeah.
it sounds very simple, but like making sure I sleep enough
Right.
and I have enough downtime where I'm like reducing stimulation and
Yeah.
bringing my nervous system down and then I can regenerate my energy.
Mhm.
Because for me, when I'm well resourced, and I think probably most people, when we're well resourced, I
Right.
think most people are naturally creative, naturally have like a zest or a passion for life, have interests in different hobbies and things that they care about. So for me, that's really the biggest piece is making sure that I'm well
Yeah.
resourced in a good place, health wise, energy wise, because then naturally I have a zest for life. I know what I'm passionate about. I know what I love. I know what lights me up.
Right.
So that's like the foundational piece, making sure my basic needs are really well met. And then having a good sense of self-awareness and being able to tune
Mhm.
into like what energizes me and what bums me out. It's like a very sort of
Mhm.
simple model. But again, I've been in time periods where my head was just so foggy and like I was just so disoriented and stressed out that I
Mhm.
couldn't accurately assess like what do I actually enjoy and what do I not. It all just felt
Right.
like a soup in my brain,
Right.
not a good soup. So when my sort of channel is clear, when my perception is clear, I can be like, oh, I really, really, really enjoy talking into a microphone.
Right.
And that's what started me on my podcast. For years, I've done audio journaling where I go on trips. I just love talking into a microphone, but I never thought like, oh, I could do something with this.
Right.
But having the clear mind, I was like, oh, like it's so energizing every time I talk into a microphone. It's not just because I like the sound of my own voice, but like there's something invigorating for me about
Yes.
finding the words to describe something that feels true to me. And so being able to pinpoint that and say like that, I like that. And
Yes.
then nurturing that awareness. So I'm like, okay, that's something that lights me up no matter what. So like I'm
Absolutely.
gonna prioritize that and find time to do that no matter what. So that's another piece of it. And then taking in beautiful art, music's
Mhm.
really important to me.
Mhm.
When I can, going to museums or art shows or things like that,
Right.
exposing myself to other people's
Right.
ideas, to other people's inspiration can be incredibly
Yes.
beneficial too. Just make sure I keep the flame of inspiration, fan the flame of inspiration
Yes.
inside of myself.
Absolutely. I will reflect on what you shared about taking care ourselves, because anyone who's listening to this who is in the corporate world, and I'll say from my own experience, that is not something that winds up being it's almost as an afterthought, because people are working so many hours, and there's the incentive plans that are in place. Like if you want a raise, you want a promotion, you want to be recognized with the company, you're going to come in early, stay late, or, show that you're online working if you're in your home office, to get those perks. And then people have other responsibilities. So if they're spending like hours every day logged on a computer or in an office, and then to find time to work out, make sure that you've eaten. I mean, I can't think of the number of times of, did I even eat today? Did I even have a lunch? Like, oh no, I haven't eaten. No wonder I'm feeling tired. And have a Diet Coke, have a Diet Pepsi, whatever. Back then, I don't drink any of that stuff now. Yeah. But I think it's like people get disconnected, which it ties in with the next thing, and like taking care of your body and just being in tune with where you're at. You don't have the luxury to have your nervous system on neutral. If you're constantly in a fire drill mode, which in a lot of corporate roles, you're in that fight or flight state. I live the agency life, so I had the responsibility to make sure that the team was doing what we needed to do to keep the client happy, right? So hourly quotas and, selling this thing or that widget or whatever those things were. One thing I remember doing when I was in one of the last roles I was in the agency, I started meditation Fridays. So we would have optional meditations on Friday afternoons for people, because the environment was so stressful. So all the things you're saying, and then staying inspired, doing things that keep you inspired. Yeah, we have to be feeding our eyes and our ears and taking in information and visual things that are appealing, keep our juices flowing and all that. So what would you say? What are some of the things you have learned about yourself in staying true to you and knowing what you're really meant to be doing versus you could be forcing yourself to be around circle in a square hole or vice versa? Yeah.
I mean, I've definitely learned about, and I relate to so much of what you're saying in terms of when you're describing the agency life and just being run ragged. Right. And for me, the worst part, I'll just say this quickly before I answer your question. Yeah. That it's not like when I was in that sort of hamster wheel grind of the corporate world, it's not like I lost my desire to feel good. Right. Like I tried. I knew so this is off. Something's wrong here. Right. And because I know what it feels like when I feel well, when I'm high functioning, when I'm well resourced. And I tried. I tried to switch around my schedule, wake up earlier so I have some more time for myself, go to the gym more. And for me, and so I guess this dovetails into your question. What I've learned is that if there's something sort of structurally, foundationally off that does not align with who I am and what I need, that sort of tweaking the periphery of the system is not going to do anything. Like if the core foundational system is off for me, right? It seemed like it didn't matter what I did, that I needed to sort of create a new system for myself. Right. So that's one thing I've definitely learned, that I was trying to be who I thought they wanted me to be in the corporate world. Right. I was trying to be a good employee. They were really, especially my last role, they were very excited about hiring me. I interviewed very strongly. I was I had a creative wave. I was riding this momentum. Right. But fundamentally for me, there was something off about that, because I've learned that being diligent and being a good worker bee is actually not what brings the best work out of me. I guess I'm an independent person. I have my own dreams, my own desires, my own wants, and that's what I want to be working on. That's my truth. Right. And I was sort of betraying that truth when I was working for someone else. Yeah. So I guess that's another thing I've learned about myself, that I'm the kind of person where I don't want to be working on someone else's projects. I have too many dreams, too many visions, too many passions, too many desires to work on someone else's projects, at least right now. Absolutely. It's so true, because it's that saying, if you don't have a vision for your life, someone else will. Yeah. And I think both you and I, which I said, I feel like we're kindred souls, because we view the world very much the same. And I just thought of also, at a certain point, there's a burnout in what people can do, especially if they're doing work for someone else that doesn't
light them up. I
Yep.
think you and I both can relate to, if I'm working on something, and I was working on something the other night, it was like midnight. I was like committed to, I'm going to figure this out. It was something that I was passionate about and had
Yep.
given myself like a deadline. I want to get this done. I really want to be able to launch this. It's so different when you're
Yep.
working on something for yourself. I think the other thing it's not surprising to me, but it is shocking in another way. And I'll say the gentleman, I don't know how many people have heard the story of the gentleman from Tesla who drove an hour and a half to work every day. I want to say he worked there like about 5 years. He got to the point where, because the commute was so long, he decided to sleep in his Tesla in the parking lot. And so he slept in his vehicle. And, at night, if he'd have to use the bathroom, he'd have to go through and show his company badge and go in. And this is just recently, within the last month.
Yeah.
4 a.m, get on his way, going, gets an email like that he doesn't need to come in, his role's been terminated.
Wow.
And he still tried to reach out to his supervisor. So I've had this realization really profoundly when I look at the hundreds of thousands of people that are being laid off. Yeah. Companies are doing it via Zoom, via text message, via email. And an employee is expected to give 2 weeks notice.
Right. Yeah.
Like, then I heard another story, which is, this is horrible. Someone had passed away and they were clearing out her office. And while they were doing it, there was some conversation within, I'm going to say the HR team was part of that. And they were talking about posting the job opening. So it's like, it's
very inhumane is what it is. Like, it's a very inhumane system.
Yes.
And I never could get over the fact that, like, we had real relationships. I had real relationships with my coworkers, and I think we genuinely cared about each other. But at the end of the day, I always knew that, if they, on a whim, they could snap their fingers and sort of turn my life upside down. And that never sat well with me.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. There's definitely a need for people to give yourself time to go within. I remember scheduling time at one point when I was with one of the agencies, and I went on a vacation, went to the Caribbean, and I literally spent time going within. I was actually writing an ebook on millennials because I was a big millennial advocate, and just getting really clear on what do I want. Most people don't take the time to do that because they're so busy. They've got maybe kids, they've got people to feed, money to be made, cars that need doctor's appointment, dentist appointment. We're human. We're human beings, not human doings.
Yeah, for sure.
And so I don't know if you have any reflections back on all of that.
Yeah, I mean, it's in the modern, busy, competitive world, is my personal experience, my personal opinion, like the demands on humans are in a lot of ways like unreasonable and just like not sustainable on our systems.
Right.
And I want to be clear, like, I value work. I work very hard. I value work. And to your point earlier, when it's something that I genuinely care about and I don't feel like I'm just part of someone else's vision, as you put it earlier, it's an incredibly gratifying feeling to grind, to work hard, to push. But that being said, especially my experience in the corporate world, that between, I'm a parent too, like taking care of my child and all the responsibilities and obligations and commitments. And I value relationships a lot. So nurturing my friendships and different family relationships. It felt like an unreasonable amount of things on my plate, demands, pressures, obligations, responsibilities, commitments. And I just think, if I'm like philosophizing, and again, this is my opinion, that it's just kind of a broken system for most people.
Absolutely.
I feel like some people maybe have, find ways or opportunities to sort of thrive within the system or have it be workable. But for so many people, I think it's just a bad system.
Right. Yeah. The way we're currently going about things, it's definitely not sustainable.
Yeah.
In any kind of a way. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And the irony of it all, as I mentioned earlier, that, if they were trying to get the most value out of me, which is, if I'm thinking about my last job in particular, that system actually was not the most effective. Like I feel like I never came even close to reaching my full potential and making the contributions that I could have made within that system. So and probably in a lot of cases, like that grinded out, almost like exploitative, I don't know, like paradigm within
Right.
that system, it's actually probably not even bringing the most out of people. So it's actually
Right.
counterintuitive or counterproductive for the companies to run in that
Right.
fashion, because ideally they want to succeed and they want to like bring together the best collection of talent and have that talent congeal into something special. And
Right.
if people are stressed and burned out and overworked and underslept, it's not going to bring people's best
Exactly.
workout. So I think there are, I don't, this is not my field of expertise, but I read little articles here and there where I
Right.
do think there are some companies out there who get that, who
Right.
get that when
Absolutely.
people feel well, when people feel appreciated, when people feel secure, when people feel spacious, especially creative people, that
Right.
actually gets the best work out of them.
Right. Yeah, when you were talking about the different dimensions of your life, it reminded me of something that I learned when I attended the New York Open Center when I became a life coach, a wheel of life exercise.
Mm-hmm.
And you've probably heard of it. It has all of the different slices for those who are listening who haven't seen it. And it is everything from where you live, what work you do, your relationships, your spirituality, your career, your health, all of those. And you put a percentage around each of those or give a number, a number from, 0 to 10, 10 being the most happy with that part of your life and
Right.
0 being it's not even happening. Once you put numbers around that and color in the wheel, for most people, my wheel was very bumpy. If it was like on a wagon going down, it would have been like a very bumpy ride. It's eye-opening because we don't usually take the time to dissect all the aspects, just as you were saying, like friends, taking time and making time for the things that we really care about and are important to us. But you can make a commitment to, okay, in this area, I'm going to do this over the next month to try to, and then you can reassess it as you go forward. Because if we don't do that, we're living, which actually I'm writing an article right now, which I'll publish next week, which is like our lives on autopilot. Are you living your life on autopilot?
For sure. Yeah, you wake up and you're whatever, like 70 years old, and like, where did my life go?
Yeah,
That's like my biggest fear, or for most of my life, that's been my biggest fear, that I'll go on autopilot, and I think that's part of the reason I've been so vigilant around making sure that I'm doing things that are aligned with what I actually care about. Because since I was super young, I had this terrible fear that like I would just sort of slip into some kind of complacent autopilot and wake up as an old person and just have a broken heart that could not be healed.
Yes. In one of the books that we read at the New York Open Center was by Donna Markova, and I will never forget the quote out of the book, "I will not die an unlived life."
I like that. Beautiful.
We look at the things that people will say when they've interviewed, as you know, people who are on their deathbed. It isn't, oh, I wish I had spent more time in the office. I wish I would have done a better presentation for that. It's like none of that stuff carries any weight at the point. And we do those things because that's part of the system, part of whatever role that we're in. But to prioritize the things that are like irreplaceable, because in the end, that's what really matters. And doing work that we're inspired to do.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, of the living life and more on your own terms, like what are some of the more rewarding things for you that have come out of making the decision to do that for yourself?
Flexibility is definitely a big one, especially my son is 7 years old, so to be able to go to almost every one of his baseball practices or baseball games, and I get to coach at times too. So flexible and also like a palpable felt feeling that like I own my life. I mean, I guess there's always going to be forces out there. I don't know if any of us are ever going to be entirely, completely free from everything, like in some kind of like Buddha state. But like there is a very different sense that I have when I'm working for myself versus when I'm working for others, where I feel like, I have some sense of sovereignty, autonomy on my own life, which means a lot to me. Like it really, if I don't have that, I just feel so kind of, I don't know, disgruntled and bummed out. So flexibility for sure. For me, like flow, that's kind of like a cliche buzzword, and I try to stay away from cliche buzzwords, but to like be in a good rhythm and flow to where I'm excited to wake up in the morning. I like the projects I'm working on. I get to follow my intuition and my inspiration. That's one of the most gratifying things ever. And that goes back to the flexibility too. So much of my work is about tuning into like where the energy wants to go. And I guess to go back to what I was talking about earlier. And to be able to sort of start to live like that, where, for instance, recently for my business Muse, I realized that I really enjoy creating content. Like I knew I liked talking to a mic, but I also like doing videos. And then I work with this really cool video editor who can enhance and augment the videos.
Right.
And so I've just started following that, and I've been doing this whole video series, and it's really exciting for me, and people are resonating and engaging and things like that. So to be able to follow the flow of things, and I guess
being true. It's taking me back to what you shared at the beginning about when you were a kid and doing the things that were inspiring and fun and more carefree and not as worried about the outcome. There have been times where I've been able to like just reconnect back with completely being a kid. And it's just autonomy to do the things in a way that inspires you. I can remember, because it's been since 2015 was when I stepped out, and I was so conditioned and programmed that I would feel guilty if I wasn't 8 o'clock on my laptop, like do something. So now I'm to the point where I recently, and I still am like reveling in this. I think I only did it one time, but on a Monday morning, it was just beautiful because I'm in like Southern California. So I took a mic and took the dog and went down along the beach and recorded and sat in the sand with bare feet.
That's how you start a day.
Yes. I recognize those moments where that is only possible when we've done the work and taken the steps to transition out of the hamster wheel. It's possible for everyone. People sometimes can't see their way clear to know what to do, but it is possible. It is possible. Sure. You and I are testaments.
Yeah. And it's interesting. You bring up like the freedom of being a child and the creativity and the play. And I totally resonate with that. It's really beautiful to see my 7-year-old. He just loves to play. He's just very natural. And he has like a natural sense of purpose too. He knows what he likes. So I resonate with that. And I guess want to make the distinction for myself that like my vision for myself is not necessarily that it's not like this pie in the sky that I'm like, especially just because like I know some people who aren't part of the hamster wheel who they're like the work from anywhere crowd, and they're like on the beach in like Thailand, doing their work or whatever. That's not me, in the sense that I'm not after this like completely like unburdened, free,
nomadic
kind of thing. Like for me, it's more about just like a sense of agency, autonomy, or sovereignty. To where like more days than not, I still keep the same schedule that I had when I was on the hamster wheel, but the difference is that I'm choosing it, and I feel empowered, and my energy is flowing, and I don't feel like I'm like beholden to something or someone in the same kind of way. So I just wanted to kind of name that too, because I guess I'm imagining people watching this and be like, oh, well, JR is just like wants to be free all the time. It's not. I wouldn't say it's that. It's more like I just want to feel like I have some kind of agency. That I'm not. That I don't just like that. My time and most of my life didn't like belong to someone else. That's not a fun feeling for anyone.
Right. I mean, that's the whole philosophy behind You Can Be Free, which is why I chose to choose that and promote that, because you can do all the things that you're talking about. I mean, I have, just like you, responsibilities and things that we do, and we have schedules and we have deadlines and things that we complete, but it's more on our terms and not because there's someone over us, like that whole system.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
So I'm curious. I'd like you to talk a little bit about the work that you do with Muse, because I think that would be interesting for probably some of the listeners, what you do to help people get in alignment and ask the right questions, et cetera. So talk about that a little bit.
For sure. The current iteration of Muse is on the newish side. So it's still kind of developing. It started off when I was at my last company as a copywriter. I kind of realized that I knew enough people that I could do copywriting on my own. So that's how I started.
Right.
But what I realized is that, first of all, copywriting, I think, has a lot less value than it did 2 years ago because of ChatGPT. Like sort of base level copywriting can be done on ChatGPT. So I recognize that like things are probably going to move away from copywriting. And I also realized that like what I actually like is interacting and engaging with people. And so very quickly, as I was working with my copywriting clients, when I left my previous company, I was like, okay, copywriting's cool. And I like have some skills and ability and experience around it, but I really, really, really enjoy, especially working with like visionary leaders, helping them sort of move out of complexity and into clarity, having deeper insight into their own mind, their own ideas, knowing what to do when they have an idea, how to push it forward, how to give it more shape and definition. I was like, that's the kind of stuff that I really enjoy.
So cool.
And so I sort of asked myself, I was like, can I reconfigure what I guess technically what I was doing before was like marketing consulting and copywriting. But I was like, can I reconfigure it and really focus on this aspect that I love, which is being in a co-discovery space with someone else, and sort of going on a journey together with someone else and building trust, earning their trust. And for me, like the creative process is all about creating the conditions to allow things to emerge. It's not about like manufacturing an idea or muscling an idea or willing an idea or forcing an idea. It's really like and I think it's one of the most beautiful aspects of life is that for me, my experience with the creative process, like something is at play.
Right.
And for me, I have to just like, not just get out of the way, but create the conditions so it can, like I said earlier, so it can emerge naturally. So I started being very interested in that. Can I do that as a kind of redesign the company in that fashion?
Right.
So I'm starting to have traction. People are interested in it. Yeah. I mean, for me, a couple of the sort of key tenets of the company. One is really understanding the creative process, some of the stuff I was just mentioning, because I think a lot of people, especially like type A personalities who have gotten very far on grit, on determination, on will.
Sheer will.
I think my experience is that they can't quite conceive that there's a letting go that has to happen in order to truly unlock their best ideas. So helping people with that's a big part of it. There's a quote that I love. It's a very simple quote, but it's been like my North Star creatively is like, make it come alive. Anything I've ever done in my entire life, I'm always aiming to make it come alive, make it come alive for myself, make it come alive for the other person, make it come alive for like a larger audience.
Right.
So helping people with that, like tuning into like what's really going to speak to someone, going to resonate deeply, going to spark something inside of them.
Right.
So there's that. And then I would say like the third pillar would be people. That my experience in the business world, not everyone, and I'm not saying it in a pointed way. I don't think anyone's intentionally doing this, but it can be very easy within the sort of stresses and pressures and demands of a very competitive business environment to sort of lose touch with the human elements, the human aspects, to start experiencing your customers as numbers on a page, to become so obsessed with survival.
Right.
And what I've found, I found it just to be better for business. Like not only is it more human, which in and of itself I think is valuable, but I actually think it's better for business to try to like just no matter what you're doing, connect to the humanity of it within yourself.
Absolutely.
And then also like, I mean, literally when I was in corporate world, like the thing that I always enjoyed most was talking to customers on a very personal, real, relatable level. And so that's kind of like the third pillar of how I help in my consulting and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's so true. Because even when I think of ad agency world, like, and you know this, we create personas.
Exactly.
And it's but think of your writing and speaking to a person of one, like it just shifts the whole thought process. If you are giving advice to someone who is wanting to make a change and shift out of what they're currently doing, what advice do you have for people?
Yeah. I mean, the first one is if you're able to because for me, the biggest impediment was always money. And I think it's probably the thing that keeps most people on the hamster wheel, that keeps people in a place of sort of stuckness. And it kept me, it's a legitimately difficult variable when you have, because for me, like, you know, the higher my salary got, the higher my cost of living got, because I would sort of like level up and like, if I get a nicer house and things like that. And like, there's more financial obligations and responsibilities. And so I was like, man, like I've created more overhead for myself. So like, I can't just leave this job. And I was like, dang, I got myself in a bind. And I think a lot of people probably can relate to that. You get a mortgage, you have kids, like you have a lot of expenses. And so, I mean, the thing that's been most helpful for me is I guess I kind of like found little pockets of space when I was on the hamster wheel to try to step out of the hamster wheel, even for like, you know, just an hour at a time, and to try to think a little bit bigger picture. Like, how can I create a little bit more of a financial cushion so that I can have, again, go back to time, the resource of time, so that I can have more time. Because I know that when I have time, I can make things happen.
Yes.
But when I don't have time, I can't make things happen. So I guess that'd be the first thing. Like, if there's a way you can think super creatively, be really resourceful, and is there a way you can create some time and space for yourself financially? That would be the biggest thing. And for me, like, I know there's a lot of different like coaches and financial planners and things like that who can help. I think there's great resources. There's one book, it's just kind of a silly title, but I found it to be very helpful, called "You Are a Badass at Making Money." Have you ever?
No, that sounds good.
Jen Sincero, I think that's how you pronounce her name. So yeah, I like that little resources like that were super helpful for me. Just like, okay, I need, like, everything else aside, I need to find some way to create time for myself. So that's one for sure, as far as advice. And then, yeah, I mean, the second one, I guess, is kind of related, but I would say that if you are in a hamster wheel, if you do feel stuck, don't underestimate the power of like tiny incremental steps and efforts.
Absolutely.
Like, even if it's 5 minutes a day, you know, if you wake up 5 minutes earlier, so you can feel like just those 5 minutes, that's your time. Like, you create time, you have that agency, that autonomy, that sovereignty. And for me, my experience is I can build momentum through that. If I have a little sliver of that feeling of like, okay, this is my time, I can feel into that and slowly expand it and kind of be patient and grow it slowly if necessary. So I guess those would be the two pieces of advice.
Absolutely. Yeah, both of those are definitely needed. And if people are unsure about what to do, I've got other videos on that where, you know, like how you figure out what it is you want to do. I actually ran into a woman on the beach the other day walking the dog, and she saw me recording. She's like, "Oh, what do you do? You're recording." And I said, "Well, I have a YouTube channel." And, you know, and then I told her what I'm helping people break free from their 9 to 5. And she just like stopped and looked at me, and she, you know, she's kind of like, how do you do that? And she, you know, and so I talked a little bit, and then she said, "Well, how do I even know what I could be doing? Because what I'm doing right now, I don't think I'd want to be doing that in my own business," you know? And then she asked me like a question about, well, what about grant writing? And I said, you know, ironically, I just talked to a startup that's a nonprofit who's looking for a grant writer. So I said, let me connect you with them. I guess I would throw in my 2 cents would be, start whatever it is that you think, get clear on what you think you want to do, and then put your toe in the water, start doing it while you've still got that paycheck coming in or whatever that's keeping you afloat. Start a side hustle, start something. You can always shift, just like you're morphing what you're doing. Like the trick is to stay fluid because nothing is constant.
Yeah, for sure.
Everything is constantly changing. So
absolutely. And I think to your point around this woman you saw on the beach, like I think one thing that I've learned is like, sometimes I have to like act as if I can trust my instincts or my ideas. Because I think when I feel stuck, or when I felt stuck at times in my life, like I might have had the idea for a podcast 3 years ago, but a million other voices come in and be like, "Oh no, you don't have the time for that. You don't know how to do that. You've never done that. What would it be about?" And then quickly like, okay, I can't do that. But I would invite people to like act as if you know what you want, who you are, what your purpose is. Act as if you know. just
Yes.
as a thought experiment.
Exactly.
and see what awakens in you. Because for me, my experience is like most of us have like the wisdom and intuition within us. It's just
Right.
we I don't know. It's like that we have so much doubt, or like that could never work, or we're overwhelmed or stressed. Or like I don't have time for that. But yeah, act as if you know exactly who you are, what you need, what you want, what your purpose
Yes.
is.
Yes. And I will say back to what you had said about the 5 minutes, whatever you can do. I always say slow motion's better than no motion.
I like
And
that.
if you just take that next intended step toward wherever it is that you're going, you'll eventually get there.
Yeah.
The biggest thing is to just start and shut down the self-limiting beliefs. I mean, I think to your point, one of the other advice I would give people is just as you were saying, for every idea you have, the self-limiting beliefs will come up, which is the ego, this and that, why this won't, that won't. To shut that down, like you acknowledge that, thank you, and then you just keep moving. Thank you,
absolutely.
but I'm moving forward, and you'll make it happen.
I agree.
JR, thank you so much for all of your sharing, your journey, inspiration. Yeah, just so good. So I'm going to include all your information. How can people get in touch with you? Through the show notes below, and I'll put all your links to your...
Yeah, I mean, put the link for the podcast, Life's Effing Nuts. So I will send them to you. You can, just check the links in the show notes.
In the show notes below. Sounds great. All right, JR, carry on being the free spirit that you are.
Appreciate it. Thank you. It was great chatting.
And that's a wrap on another episode of And Then I Did This, celebrating the lives of those who've walked away from the beaten path to pursue work and a life that nourishes their soul. If you're feeling inspired and ready to explore your own path to freedom, check out youcanbefree.life, where you'll find resources and support to help you break free and live life on your own terms. See you next time.